I'm Sean, I do research for people. I've been working in the games industry for 16 years. I started out doing focus groups for people, basically, working out what was the best thing about the game and how to tell people about it, who to tell. Then 10 years ago, I and a guy who used to be head of strategy at Sony called Nick Parker noticed that every other industry had something called usage and attitude tracking, where you basically keep an eye on what people are doing, who's doing what, and what they think about it, what they like about it, and so on. So we went around all the publishers, formed a syndicate, and all the publishers then, and ever since, have paid us to gather lots and lots of data. Now, one of the themes of this fantastic conference is that there's just constant rate of change. If you saw that fantastic Lego presentation by Jonathan yesterday, just change. The behavioral side of what we do, data, as we've just seen from Dylan, as we saw from Darren at the beginning, data, network data, the metrics you can pick up, that's sort of cross-related with our way of doing things, and in some ways is better. Our way of doing things is just go out and ask people what they're up to. It's all reported. It's not nabbed off a network somewhere. It's all reported data. But and that's very good at that. Network is great for that. But what that can never do is find out what people like. You have to ask people what they like. And so that's what we've been doing. And it's the output of that I want to share with you. But before we do that, I want you to imagine yourself 200 years ago, and let's be all on a ship, okay? And it's 1814. We're all on a ship together, and we have just been completely battered by a storm. All right, for 2.5 days, and I'm looking at some of you, and you're already convincing, let me tell you. For 2.5 days, we have been completely battered. We know we're in the Atlantic somewhere, but we don't know where. So what do you do? Well, the storm has abated. It is now a happy, sunny day in the middle of the Atlantic, but we haven't got a clue where we are. So what do? You send, it's the Navy, so obviously, you send for the ship's boys, okay? The ship's boys, people as young as Sam, who we saw yesterday. Normally, the relatives of other officers in the Navy. You've got them on your ship, you're training them up, they'll be officers eventually. They haven't really got many real jobs, but one of their jobs at noon is to come and stand on the back of the ship and hold in their hands a sextant. Now, a sextant is a very clever, very simple instrument. There's a half mirror on the front, there's a full mirror on the top. The half mirror allows you to look through a very little hole at the horizon, but because it's a half mirror, it also allows you to line up the sun with the horizon, okay? You do that by adjusting that sort of pendulum thing at the bottom. And when you've got the sun sitting dead on the horizon, that gives you the angle of difference between the horizon and the sun. When that's at its absolute maximum, that's noon, okay? Very useful bit of information, because if you subtract that from 90 degrees, know what day of the year it is, you can work out exactly your latitude, how far up the globe you are. Then, because you've called it's noon, you go running downstairs to the ship's chronometers, and there's 4 or 5 of those, just like there were 4 or 5 boys doing this at the same time. You compare your local noon to the time at Greenwich, and you've got your longitude. You've got exactly how far around the world you are. Now, the sextant is an incredibly accurate thing. The sextant, there are 360 degrees in a circle. Each of those degrees has 60 minutes. Each of those minutes has 60 seconds. And a sextant properly used is accurate to 10 seconds of 1 minute of 1 degree, which is about a mile on the face of the Earth. It's an incredibly accurate piece of kit. So you do all that, and you're able to position yourself on a map. Just waiting for this. What you've used is 2 reference points, 2 bits of kit, the sextant, the clock. The reference points were the sun and the horizon, some maths, a little bit of maths, and a multiple of perceivers. That's how you've arrived at your position. There's the map. There's where our ship is. We know. We're no longer worried. We're not going to hit anything. It's fantastic. But how did you get to the map? How did you get to that first map? Well, obviously, you could wander along the coast, and Charles, when I was first talking about this presentation, Charles showed me a brilliant map they tried to do by wandering along the coast in the 13th century. And it was strangely sideways, and it was desperately inaccurate, but you could sort of see where Italy was, which was the center of the known universe at that stage. Once you've got a sextant and you've got your maths and your perceivers and a ship, you can go sailing along these shores, do all those multiple readings, and you come up with a much more accurate map like that. Now, say what you wanted to do was do a map of all the games, which is what we wanted to do. Say what you wanted to do was position all the games according to why people like them. How would you go about that? Well, firstly, you should be aware there are some problems with that. A lot of people know nothing. Let's say 30% of the population know enough about games to be worth talking to. Let's just talk to them. Secondly, you're going to have some people who think they know everything, but actually they don't, and their opinion is no more valid than anybody else's. They just happen to know a few more games, but they're not more important. We want a nice democratic map. Dylan, can I take that water? And I blame my fellow poker players for this. I'm drying up slightly. Is Clive here? So he came, he won, and he left. That's just outrageous. I feel abused. I often feel abused. So a lot of people know nothing, don't bother talking to them. Some people think they know everything. We don't really want to overweight their opinions particularly. This is a very important point about research. If you go around asking people what they don't like, they'll give you a list of, they'll certainly know what they don't like. They know much less about the things they don't like than the things they do like. They tend to cut off from things at a fairly early stage for a particular reason. And if you ask them why they don't like it, they'll give you that reason. But that has nothing to do with a knowledge of the depth of the experience. It's only the first reason they didn't like it. So some people don't like fantasy games, just don't like them. Some people don't like historical games, they just don't like them. And they'll say that's the reason I don't like it. That's sort of vaguely useful to know, but nothing like as important as why people like games. So, the last bit is what are our reference points? What's going to be our sun and our horizon by which we're going to map all these games? Well, the first one's obviously the games themselves. But the second one that we used is the likes, is actually the likes. We used fixed likes. We came up with 24 different ways you could possibly like a game, things about it that were the reasons you enjoyed it. This is the phrasing we used. When thinking about the game you play, which of these describes what you most enjoy about it? And then we used these 24 statements, or things, and they had to pick between 1 and 4 of these. So it's things like, it puts me in the heart of the fight, or the ability to create and develop my own character, or the mental challenge, or the chance to do things I cannot do in real life. Put all 24 of those together. So we've got now 24, if you like, reference points. We've got, we did it for 200 games. I don't think we've got data for 200 games because some were a bit thin. We do 10,000 gamer interviews a year, and we've done that for 10 years, and now I'm showing off, we do it in 5 languages. We build all that up. You do something called correspondence analysis, firstly on the likes. Basically, you see which of those 24 statements tend to arise together when talking about games. And you get to this. This is a map of all the different things, of those 24 statements according to a correspondence analysis. Now, if you want to, what you tend to do is the mapping first and then the sort of thinking about it later. But basically, in that top left-hand corner, you've got the statements sort of associated with combat. In the top right-hand corner, you've got statements sort of associated with social interplay, physical gaming, moving around, that sort of thing. Down here, bottom right, you have statements associated with design, with building, with more creative, putting things out there type things. And then over here, you have statements to do with narrative. And in fact, what happens is, there's nothing there, and that's because if there was something there, it would be incredibly like a film, as in a film rather than a game. It would be a purely narrative experience, and in that sense, no longer interactive. What you then do, having got your position of all these statements using this correspondence analysis, is you put the games on it. So if I did it all over the map, it would just be a blot. So let's look in the top left-hand corner. So these are the statements to do with the most sort of combat-y games. And if we then put the games on, these are mapped according to their proximity to those statements, according to how many people mentioned those statements when they talked about those games. So at the top you have Call of Duty, Left 4 Dead. As the game comes down, generally you remember narrative, and narrative-y stuff was in the segment below. It's the sort of narrative content of those games that's pulling them down. As it's going that way, it's because they're becoming more social or whatever. What you can then do is something called cluster analysis, very simple, put them into bunches that are close together. And if we do that transition, I'll show you the 16 clusters of actual games. So these are each of these clusters is populated by real games rather than just statements about games. So in that corner, then, it's Scary Combat. These are our names for mathematical clusters. Scary Combat, Intense Combat, Fighters, okay? Then we get to this. That's the whole gaming space summarized in those clusters. Now that becomes quite a potent, quite a powerful tool, because what you can do with that, he says, rapidly adjusting his microphone again, what you can do with that is overlay the data for anything you like. You could compare PlayStation 4 to Xbox. You can compare boys to girls. You can compare anything for which we've got data. Now, for the purposes of this conference, which has emerged to be all about change, luckily I chose the following. I'm going to compare 2011 to 2013, okay? Do it again. 2011, the size of the bulls is based on the play rates in the marketplace, to 2013. You will see some things have got smaller, some things have got bigger, just to show you which of those. The one that's exploded, and this is in the iPhone, iPad generation that Darren was talking so much about, that Darren was talking about as well, casual puzzles have exploded. So your Candy Crushes and so on have exploded. My 5 categories for the categories that gaming forgot, and they're not really forgotten, we'll see that in a second, are these 5. These are the ones that have got smallest over the last 2 years, if you compare 2011 to 2013. You can take photos if you want, but if you give me your card, I'll send you the presentation. That's how pleased I am with it. Creative fun, virtual hobbies, intense combat, party games, physical fun. Those are the 5 that have just got less play in the last 2 years. If we put them back on the map and look at them, starting with creative fun. So that would be titles like Nintendogs, Little Big Planet, Toy Story. Those are the top scoring games in that category. There are lots more in there. They have kind of dropped off a cliff in the last 2 years. Doesn't mean there aren't people who still don't want to play them. In fact, there's probably lots of people who love those sort of games. Lots of kids coming through would love those sort of games. But we have not been providing those sort of games to those kids. They've gone to other categories now. Maybe other categories are more suited to the consoles they're using now, things like the iPhone and the tablet. But those games seem to have gone. Next one, we're calling it virtual hobby, but it is where the big sports sims sit. So FIFA, Pro Evo, Mario and Sonic at the Olympics score highly in that one. The next one's intense combat. Those have gone down. They're hardly categories that have been forgotten. The reason they've gone down is actually a lot of gaming has gone down in the last 2 years. And those two, as principal category leaders, have been sort of carried down with it. If you think they're unfair, I will give you numbers 6 and 7 so to fill in the gaps. The next one's very obvious. Physical fun, you look at those titles, Wii Sports, Wii Fit, Just Dance. Much less now than they were 2 years ago when they were stealing all that store space at the front of stores. Next one, Wii Party, Mario Party, Guitar Hero. Those sort of party games have gone down. Now, I've heard that they're going to come back in a sort of iPhone format. Thank you. Right. That's it. Just in case you think it was unfair doing virtual hobbies and the combat category, the next two down were the fighters category, so games like Tekken, Street Fighter. People love those games, but they haven't been provided recently. And mental challenge, games like Kawashima, purely about a cerebral challenge. Now, I believe in starting conversations with a gift, so I have brought a little gift for you all. We created a little app just for you lot. Here is the app. It's on our website. Just go to GameVisionResearch.com. What you will get when you get there, if you press, thank you, E, if you'd press that button for me, you get a list of all the games we track. Shout one out. Shout out a big game title. FIFA. Okay, press FIFA, E. FIFA, there are the 10 games that FIFA is most like, okay? Those are the games that are mapped most closely to FIFA, according to our cluster analysis. But here's the fun bit. Here are the reasons why, okay? Now, this is live. You can go away and play with this on your tablets later. If the slider is towards the right, that is the most crucial reason that that game is in that position, okay? That is the most descriptive part of why that game is in that position. If you move the sliders about, so E, pick one on the right-hand side and slide it around. Not that one, yeah, any of those. Move 2 of them. This is completely random. I have no idea. It rewrites the list for you, and you'll see. So you'll be able to see what would it be like if FIFA was much more violent, or what would it be like if Call of Duty had a social party element. You could see what those games would be like. More usefully, you can sort of tease things about and see what's making that game in the position it's in. Okay, so that's my little gift to you. Enjoy it for the rest of the day. Thank you very, very much for listening to me. Thanks.
Probably just.
Any questions?
I think we've got time for one question.
Sir.
Has there been any single piece of data or research that has come out of all this that you found the most interesting or surprising, perhaps, that you didn't mention today?
I don't know. It was fascinating watching social games die recently, with social networks gaming sort of just collapse, having thought that it was shagging itself with over-monetization and just felt that, watching it slowly ebb away and watching that much over-promised thing collapse. I'm loath to predict what the next one of those is going to be, because one of the things I've got from this conference is just how much it is all changing. And I'm going to walk away and we're going to change things, and we might redo that map slightly. And we're certainly, I've had conversations around this conference about extending it, trying to find a way of getting enough data so that we can send it from sort of the 200 easy-to-guess top games out to something like 500, and finding ways of sharing data with people so that we can do that. But exciting? No, maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too jaded. Maybe you catch me the night after I got thoroughly beaten at poker and I'm feeling less excited. But no. And there are the 2 culprits right there, let me tell you. So sorry, no, nothing particularly exciting. Listen, thank you very much for your time.